because it touches the two topics that are a little controversial. And then in this case, you have miscarriages, you have abortion, like handle that, the grief in this case. If it's okay, we start with you, Miranda. You wrote and directed the story. What inspired you to write this story?
Look, I think at the heart of it, it was a fascination which comes out in a lot of my work with our relationships with our body. So, you know, we're so intrinsically wedded to our physical selves, and yet we don't always know how to listen to our own bodies. On the one hand, we're sort of driven by instinct and, you know, these kind of primal evolutionary mechanisms that we don't even fully understand. But on the other hand, you know, we're striving intellectually for certain things. And I think something that I'd witnessed in myself and in other people I knew was the journey of wanting to become a parent and suddenly coming up against this body that doesn't necessarily want to do what you want it to do. You know, you kind of might assume that you can have a child until you start trying to fall pregnant. And then all of a sudden you realize that it's not that easy for a lot of people. And then even, you know, if people do fall pregnant, then miscarriages, abortions, stillbirth, all those sort of things. I was seeing a lot of people around me going through that journey. And I thought it's something that's not really, I hadn't seen explored a lot on screen, but I felt like it was something that was really pertinent and worth exploring. So that's where the inspiration came from.
And for you, Laura, and I mean, what attracted you to play your role? That it was pretty, I don't know, it seemed like it took a lot out of you.
Yeah, I thought that as soon as I read the script, I had a really visceral response to it. I thought it was so raw and truthful and spoke to, as you say, these themes that, you know, happen to so many women, but we don't always talk about it, both sort of pregnancy loss and in the form of stillbirth in this case, or miscarriage, but also abortion. And I thought it was really interesting how Miranda was showing sort of both ends of the spectrum of a woman, Claire, who I play, who's, you know, had this incredibly traumatic stillborn birth experience, but also in the younger character of Angie has this unwanted pregnancy and, you know, ultimately maybe doesn't want to go through with it. And I just thought, like Miranda says, it's just so pertinent. And, you know, 1 in 4 women experience pregnancy loss. And yet I don't think that's necessarily how we would experience it in our lives, because it's not something that's talked about. And I think even since we made the film, it's becoming more and more spoken about, which is awesome. And, you know, people with profiles are kind of being really raw and upfront about their experiences. And I think it's really great. But I just thought overall, though, aside from that, the script and the character had this really compelling, so I couldn't put it down. And I like Claire's obsessive, sometimes unlikable, kind of nuanced way of being was something that I just was really keen to portray.
What was it about reading the script what was it that you were looking forward to bringing out about your character, Claire?
I mean, it's funny because when you read a script for the first time, it's sort of a big soup, and it's hard to even know what exactly it is that kind of hits a nerve. And because by the time you're actually filming, you've done so much research and preparation that it's kind of turned into a whole other beast. Mm-hmm. But I think it was probably just her, the way that Claire is seeing the world and the way the film is following her, and she's such an unreliable narrator, and I really was interested in kind of playing with what's real, what Claire thinks is real, and what Claire doesn't realize is real, but everybody else, you know what I mean? Like just like all these different kind of perspectives. I was really fascinated in kind of teasing that apart, and I'm exploring that.
And Miranda, how did you know that Laura was the perfect one for this role?
Laura's heard me say this so many times before, but when I was writing it, obviously I had, it's all very internalized as well. I'm hearing the rhythms of the piece in my head as I'm writing it, and the rhythms of the dialogue. And of course, I didn't really expect that an actor would necessarily bring that to it. You know, they're going to make their own mark on it. But when Laura did her self-test in this case, she was just voicing the rhythms that were in my head and in my body. So it was amazing. It was kind of synchronicity. It had to be, because she seemed to be already on such a wavelength with me. It was like, yeah, she was essentially embodying the character as I'd imagined it. So yeah, it was a pretty easy decision.
And I'm lucky.
Was this filmed in Australia?
Yes.
Beautiful scenery, the cinematography when it comes to the scenes. I mean, you have like, I'm assuming they were drones. So for some of the
Some was drone,
beautiful.
yeah. But Bonnie Elliott, the cinematographer, she's an amazing talent. We're really lucky to have her, and she's a rare, well, I think she's a rare talent in that she's got such an amazing visual sense, but also a real sense for story. And so she and I worked together on a previous short film, and then she'd read very early drafts of this, and we'd been brainstorming for about 4 years before we actually shot it. So, you know, she'd really kind of ingested the language of it and brought a whole lot to the table as well.
I think a lot of those takes, and then the water takes, the ocean, you have a lot of water flowing. I mean, the title itself.
Yes.
What made you want to use, in a way, water as a metaphor to the story?
For me, I'm kind of just obsessed with that cyclical, the cyclical nature of life, and water for me is a huge metaphor for that kind of ebb and flow, and the way that everything's interconnected. You know, where I can't remember the exact numbers, but we're like 70% water, or our bodies are a high percentage of water. We are water. The planet is such a high percentage of water. I feel like it sort of represents that interconnected nature of everything. So that ties in with the themes that I was talking about before, of our bodies and the way that our bodies and nature are entwined, and that kind of the cyclical nature of things. It just seemed to make sense.
You know, after watching the film, I was like, that's how kind of life is. You know, you never know what wave you're going to get thrown at.
Absolutely.
So that was brilliant. And Laura, what was it like to film underwater? It looked really cold, by the way.
Yeah.
A black dress.
It was pretty cold. We shot in, I think it was May here, so we were just sort of heading into winter, so it could have been worse. And they were really good about making sure that I wasn't in the water for too long and coming out and sitting in a hot shower in between takes. But it's also that it was sort of like freezing and awful, and absolutely exhilarating and amazing to be in the ocean like that with this really great crew around me. It was kind of like a once in a lifetime experience.
Hopefully.
Hopefully, yeah.
Hopefully no other cruel director throws you in the freezing Victorian Ocean.
And then for you, Miranda, I mean, how do you direct these underwater scenes?
Look, that was where one of the situations where I had a lot of faith in Bonnie. So Bonnie was in the water in a wetsuit with some of the crew and with Laura, and I was on the beach. And because of it being in choppy surf, we couldn't obviously have a video split, so I wasn't seeing directly what was being filmed. But because Bonnie and I were had planned so carefully, and that I knew that we had a really shared vision, I just trusted that she knew what we needed, and and that she got it.
So all the underwater scenes were at the beach. It wasn't like a tank sort of thing.
No, it was all in the ocean.
Oh,
and
we had a second unit day, didn't we, where we went and did with an underwater camera and a specialist.
Just at a different part of the ocean, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was not as choppy. So we could get more clarity.
Exactly. The actual like deeper underwater ones were, I think it was an area of the bay where it was not, so much surf, right?
Yeah.
Separate day. Yeah,
because it wasn't that deep where we were making it look much scarier than it was. I was actually kind of crawling on my knees to make it look like I was up to you. I could stand up and be fine.
That's probably me at the beach all the time.
Yeah.
So this question's for both of you. Laura, you can start. What's the scene that you look forward to shooting?
Ooh,
That was challenging
that's a
for
good.
you as an actress.
That I looked forward to, or was it challenging? I
And-
guess, yeah. Oh, I mean, there was definitely the physicality of the water stuff for sure. I think I was really excited to do some of the scenes with Olivia, who played Angie. Yeah, I mean, often as an actor, you don't get to work opposite another female actor all the time. You do a lot of stuff with, your male co-stars, which is obviously great. But that was, I think, the relationship between Claire and Angie in the film for me was what was most compelling. And so there's a scene where later on in the film where she comes and sort of, oh, spoiler, how do I talk about this? Where she sort of starts to understand what I'm up to. And it gets quite physical. And we're not really sure if it's even happening in reality or if it's just happening in Claire's head. But I felt like that was really interesting and dangerous. And I really looked forward to filming that. I mean, I think I always look forward to the scenes that I'm most scared of. So half of me doesn't want to do it. And the other half of me can't wait to do it. And I guess that's like the joy of acting, sort of the push-pull of like, oh, I'm scared, but I really want to do this.
You enjoy the discomfort.
Yeah, I guess so.
And for you, Miranda, which scene were you looking forward to shooting? I mean, after all, you wrote it, so you had so much attachment to it.
Not the one in the water, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think because my background is as an actor originally, working with the actors is my favorite part of the process. So not one specific scene, but any of the scenes, the big kind of emotional, dramatic scenes between Claire and Dan or Claire and Angie, I found them really enjoyable and satisfying to kind of sink our teeth into, as it were.
Right now, you mentioned that we know you're an actress also, but do you feel that you're in an advantage when it comes to directing?
Yeah, look, I'm not an actress anymore. That's kind of just where I started, but I do definitely think that having had that experience just kind of lends itself to the directing process because, you just have a on the ground understanding of what it's like to be an actor. Both the kind of, I guess, emotional experience of it, also the technical elements of it, and different kind of techniques that people use. So I definitely think it is useful.
Mm-hmm. And can we talk a little bit about the scene where you have the character of Angie show up, out of frustration at the fundraiser? That was a pretty strong scene, just seeing how, she decides to show her pain, her emotions. How was it to film that scene?
Look, that was Olivia is just so fearless. She just threw herself, like Laura, they both just threw themselves completely into the characters and were so fearless and generous and committed to the roles. So, I mean, I really couldn't have asked for more. In fact, they went above and beyond my expectations. So that was one of the examples where Olivia just, went for it. And she was so funny. She was just ad-libbing heaps and improvising, and she was brilliant, and it was incredibly raw and powerful. It was exhilarating to shoot.
Yeah, that was a great scene. I actually got goosebumps when I saw that scene, and I was like, Claire's got to go with her.
Yeah,
I was like, what? She has to go.
I know, that's what
I
you
remember
see.
watching that. I remember being off camera watching Olivia do her coverage, and it's one of those times where you just go, damn, I wish that you could put every take that someone's doing into the film, because every time they called action, she did something different, and it was all, and yeah, because she was ad-libbing a lot, and sometimes it was really funny and then really dark and tragic, and I was really in awe of her that day. I was like, and it was also freezing. She was so cold, and she was like going for it. I was like, this is amazing.
For both of you, what do you both hope that viewers take away from watching this film?
For me, you know, I love the idea that film is a chance to walk in someone else's shoes. And, you know, they say if you walk, you know, you can never really understand somebody until you walk a mile in their shoes. And is that what they say? Anyway, I think that's what, you know, that's the power of art, of film, of literature, where it just gives you that brief kind of insight into someone else's experience. And I think, as we were talking about before, that miscarriage, etc., is so little talked about. You know, this is a chance for people to kind of explore that subject in a way that might open up some conversations, that might allow people to, you know, talk about their own experiences, talk about other people's experiences. So yeah, really, it's just kind of a contribution to the conversation.
And for you?
Yeah, I think that I hope for people who have had experiences that this film touches on, I hope that it makes them, or helps to make them feel seen in some way. And then for people who don't really have a personal connection to the themes in the film, hopefully it gives them some insights and some understanding that they can take forward. But also, you know, it is a psychological thriller, so I hope people find it, you know, entertaining and thrilling, and a really interesting ride as well.
And then just to finalize, is there anything you guys can share that you may be working on or potentially be seeing you in?
I've got a couple of things in development, nothing quite at the sharing stage, but yeah, hopefully soon.
Fingers crossed for you.
I have a film coming out later in the year, and pandemic, hopefully I'll be shooting a film in a few months in Australia.
Great. Well, thank you so much, ladies, for your time.